two have been speaking about doing this for quite some time. Kev, so I think we've spoke about this at work and outside of work as well, about doing a wrestling podcast and just speaking in general about our love for the wonderful and sometimes weird and wacky world of wrestling. So just sort of wanted to get together, didn't we, really, and just sort of speak and hopefully put it out to like-minded individuals who sort of might even take something from it. So I suppose what's your expectations of the podcast? What are you hoping to get from it?
Just to reach out to people around our age, and well, all ages really, who just have the same love for wrestling that we do, who just are not ashamed to. That's okay to not be ashamed to love wrestling, because it is.
Yeah,
it's one of the greatest sports on the planet.
Sports entertainment, don't forget.
Yeah.
I think it's something we've touched on, innit? You know, the whole. I think there was a bit of a stigma growing up, not necessarily growing up, but maybe as I've come into my sort of late 20s and early 30s, entering my mid 30s now. But I think there was always a bit of a stigma around liking it and kind of not hiding it, but almost feeling as though I had to make an excuse to like it and to watch it. And I think you've sort of touched on that as well. And I think as I've grown older and I've sort of realised, you know what, like I like what I like, and since being year high, I've loved this industry, like an absolute love, everything about it. And while sometimes there's things that frustrate you and there's things that, you know, really grind your gears, so to speak, I think I'm hooked. I've always been hooked. I used to remember people saying, "Oh, look at them grown men in the crowd, how sad," or you know, you won't like it when you're older, and you kind of bought into that. I kind of bought into that sort of idea and that ideology. But here I am, 34 yesterday, and still loving it, and probably in love with it more than I ever was, if I'm being really truly honest. I don't know about yourself, you know, what your thoughts are on that, but
Yeah, well, you've got a year on DDP still. He trained to be a professional wrestler when he was 35. So you've got.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's like when we did the NGW training, like just being in a room full of lads who love wrestling, it was so amazing, wasn't it? Just like not having to like feel a little bit ashamed, or like, because you could just speak openly about wrestling in front of everyone, and everyone understood, and everyone had that same passion. I think that was. I mean, I love going to the NGW training, but it was just amazing to be there and hearing everyone else's experiences of it, and not like feeling like, oh, I like wrestling, but they'll not understand. Like when you talk to a group of people who maybe watched it years ago and they have like sort of memories of it, but they don't watch it now. It's nice to be with a group of people who still watch it and still have input in it.
Yeah, because I think, you know, it's something that was always quite big when I was growing up in the sort of 90s and early noughties, and then I think it's something, and I suppose because obviously the people I was growing up with, apart from I think one or two friends, as you grew up with them and they got older and they sort of went their own way with sort of like the content of what they was watching, you know, some of them switched off from it, some of them stayed with it, but I think it very much sort of took that direction of less and less people around me were speaking about it, and less people were watching it, and it became almost, I think that's when I fell into that hole of no, I don't want to use the word ashamed, because like I was never ashamed, but like almost, as I say, like kind of trying to make excuses for watching it because I kind of didn't want to be judged for some reason, and it's silly really, but yeah, it is what it is. I think what's I mean, sort of looking back, I'm just interested to know what your first sort of memory is, and sort of what the most vivid part of that is, and maybe what hooked you into wrestling.
I remember it really vividly. Actually, it was Christmas. We were we went to visit my auntie. Who I had some cousins who were about 2 or 3 years older than me. Uh, I had a few. I didn't have Sky at the time, but I had a few friends who used to talk about wrestling. They were mentioning about WrestleMania 6 and something, and I was like bugging my mom and dad to get me like wrestling stuff, but they didn't. My dad's a secret wrestling fan. Like
Oh, right, okay.
he'd watch Raw with us on Friday night when it was us there, but as soon as we won't come, he'd be like, "Oh, turn this off, it's ridiculous." But when it was just us, he'd sit there and watch it with us and get really into it with us as well and really enjoy it. Anyone else there, he was like, "Oh, turn this off, it's rubbish." So go back to it. I was at my auntie's and my dad just mentioned in passing, "Oh, he's really wants to start watching wrestling." And my uncle was like, "Oh, the lads love wrestling. I've got some wrestling tapes." And he put the 1991 Royal Rumble on. It just
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Rockers, and they were just fighting the Orient Express, and we're like, there was like flipping off the top rope and that, and like Gorilla Monsoon and Roddy Pipe was like commentary. It was just brilliant. Like everything was just over the top, like 100 miles an hour. Like all the because the Rockers used to wear like the even just the ring attire it was just like a sensory overload, and I was hooked. Then I was like, this is amazing. This is what I want to watch for, and I watched the entire thing. And I remember I didn't really understand the Royal Rumble, what was going on. Like, thinking why are the wrestlers keep on running it? So I was about 6, and I was like, what's happening? Why are they not pinning each other? Why are they throwing each other off the rope? But sort of understood the Royal Rumble and seen Hulk Hogan at the end, like winning as the hero. I still get goose pimples now. Although he's all the shitty stuff he's done, but when you see Hulk Hogan, I still get them goose pimples. I turn into a little 6-year-old. So I mean, you're slightly younger than me. So what was your first
Yeah,
experience?
don't forget that. Don't forget that. My first experience, really, I mean, I always used to remember car boot sales being a big thing. Like, there's like a local market area near to where I used to grow up, where I did grow up, and they used to sell, obviously, on a Sunday, used to have like a car boot sale, and on a Sunday morning, go down there, and there'd be loads and loads of VHSs. So for those that are a little bit of a younger generation, that was before DVDs and Netflix and all this sort of stuff that you see nowadays. So VHS is where you'd have to sometimes rewind it and sort of get a pen in there and sort of rewind the tape or reel it back in with like, so there was like cassettes basically, but the videos, the VHSs, and I always remember there was one that my dad got me, and I for the life of me cannot remember. I know it was an NWA VHS. It was like an NWA pay-per-view, and I always remember the first match that I turned on and watched. So obviously there was likes of Sting on there, before he became like the Brandon Lee sort of Crow character. But the main sort of match that stuck in my mind was the first match on there, which was the Steiner brothers. Now, there was sort of wrestling a bit of a jobber team, for want of a better phrase, but I just remember seeing them and seeing the Frankensteiner for the first time. And obviously, this is before Scott Steiner's career took off as a singles competitor, and he became Big Papa Pump. Yeah, I wish I had the muscles to do that, but yeah, before he sort of went to WCW and WWE and everything, obviously he had the long brown hair and was very athletic, and then Rick Steiner was more of like the sort of like the real gnarly pit bull brawler sort of stuff. But they were just so good to watch, and I just remember like seeing the chemistry in the ring and just everything. And I think similar to yourself, like from a sensory overload point of view, it's just like everything, the music, like the crowd reactions, like the competitiveness of what was going on in the ring, and just sometimes thinking like as a kid, like because I would have been like maybe 7 or 8 when I first watched this, and I just think, oh my god, like how are they doing this? Like, obviously as a grown man now, you have a bit more of an insight into it because you watch documentaries and sort of you learn things about the sport itself in general. But I think being a young kid, seeing that like was just unbelievable. Like seeing people do backflips off people's shoulders, and like the Hurricane Rana as a child, you're like you can't make head or tail of how how that's even possible physically. Like it just doesn't look like possible, like to be able to put your legs on someone's neck essentially and turn them round under your body and like.
I'm not sure about you, but when we were at the NWO training, the slam of the
NGW,
NGW, the slam on the apron, that noise is so exciting.
Yeah.
Like when you watch it on telly, nothing can prepare you for when you watch a live event, or when you hear it live, it's deafening, but it's so good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think obviously the rings that we trained in from what we got told, they're slightly less forgiving than what you'd get obviously in like your major brands, your AWs and your WWEs and TNAs, and but so obviously, and we helped put that ring up, so we kind of know how much give it had in it, and or should we say how little give it had in it in the ring. So we got a real sort of taste of that early on, didn't we? I think that immediately, just sort of going back to sort of why, not necessarily why I wanted to do this podcast, but also just why I love and sort of in the main respect the guys that are involved in it and the girls, obviously. Like, yeah, I obviously grew up as a fan, like that 101, like that's the main part. It's like, I'll always be, and I always was a wrestling fan. But until we went, I think it was like best part of like, it might even be coming up to like about a year ago now, Kev. Like that's how quick this year's gone. Obviously due to the pandemic and everything. But that first night that we went and we got a real taster of putting the ring up, and it was a bit of a culture shock on it, because I don't think either of us sort of expected it to be the way it was, and the padding in the ring not as forgiving as what we would maybe not necessarily hoped but expected, and yeah, like and how hard the training was. 3 hours of just what can only be described as putting your body through like hell, like constant up, down, left, right, like constant recovery training and sort of being slammed on the floor and chucked about and grappling and hitting the ropes, which again, like they're hard, they are really hard. And like, don't ever, and if you ever want a professional's viewpoint on this, just to back this up, listen to the interview with Tyson Fury. When he fought Braun Strowman, he speaks about the fact of how much respect he had when he went and trained with them. And anybody ever tells you, oh, it's fake, or I hate using that word, by the way, but or it's it's not hard, they're not proper athletes, go down to a wrestling school. I really, really, not dare you to, but urge you to, because first and foremost, if you don't walk out of there with at least respect for the guys that are in that business, and there's something wrong with you, in my opinion, because what they put their bodies through is just unbelievable. And obviously we've been unfortunate enough to see it kind of fall by the wayside in our local area, obviously due to the pandemic and everything, and social distancing measures being in place, and we can't go at the minute. But I know that, and I can speak for you on this, that we absolutely loved every minute, and gained a lot more respect and just even more love and affection for this sort of industry.
There was a type of brotherhood that was with all the lads, like second or third time, like all the lads coming over, like hugging you and that, and like fist bumping and stuff, and like.
And they'd never even met us.
Yeah, like when you did something, they'd come over and tell you like how much good effort you put in, and it was just that kind of encouragement, like so much like respect, and like I wouldn't say the training was really hard, but there was so much, like they were so friendly and respectful, and like there was no egos. Everyone was really like everyone was there for the wrestling, and like there was no one there where I met who was there for themselves. Everyone was really nice, like, and I think that's the kind of people you want to be involved with, because I didn't see anyone with an ego or anything. It was just all like everyone just respected each other because we all worked hard, and I think everyone was like that.
Yeah, I think I echo that, and I think it was possibly the most welcoming place I've ever been. You know, I've been lucky enough to do many sports, you know, in my lifetime. You know, from rugby to football, basketball, boxing, mixed martial arts. Sorry, well, martial arts. You know, and all of these places, whilst I met some great people, I think the few weeks and months that we spent there, I can say this confidently. I'm not just saying this, like genuinely, probably the most welcoming place like I've ever been. Most welcoming people I've ever been around. The most least judgmental. You could just feel the almost the expectation of sort of putting that sort of persona of yourself out there to the world of I have to fit a certain profile, or I have to fit a certain expectation of people. So I have to, you know, look a certain way or talk a certain way or act a certain way. And in there, it's just you are yourself, and it's such a nice place to be around, and lovely people to be around. And yeah, I'd go back in a heartbeat. So I think it, as I say, it just created even more space in my heart for the industry in general. And I know you're the same. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure about you, but when at the end of the night, when they put on the matches, just sat there watching the match, that's the most content I feel I've ever been. Like doing
yeah,
something or being somewhere, just sat with people, like watching someone wrestle, like, because
yeah,
there was about 10 of us, and like we were all expected to like be the crowd and that, and I just felt so like it's hard to put words in what it felt like, but
yeah,
just I've never had that kind of like in any sport or hobby I've done, have that kind of like connection, and it was just so good. Like no problems, no troubles, no stress, nothing. It was just in the moment at that time.
yeah. No, agreed. I mean, sort of talking about our love for wrestling in general, like, you know, like it's probably a nice sort of segue into what we want to speak about next, really. Like, you know, growing up, I mean, I am obviously, as you quite rightly pointed out, like I'm a little bit younger than you, but not like massively younger. So we've sort of grew up in a very similar era, and probably saw it in the same era, you know, as each other, and probably was watching it at the same time. And I think if we go back to say the Attitude Era, so sort of like, you know, early noughties and late 90s, when for me, and maybe it was just because I was a child at school, that was kind of like the pinnacle, like the height of professional wrestling, like when it was obviously Nitro versus Raw and the Monday Night Wars. And I think for me, like, I just want to sort of speak about it openly, what sort of like how we look at it now as sort of 30 plus old men, you know, compared to what we watched, what the product was that we watched as children, um, growing up. Like, what are your sort of thoughts on that? Like, how you see the business now and the product that we watch compared to what you watched growing up?
And just from a like visual point of view, the production's a lot better. I mean, the arenas look with the LCD like things gone across and that, it seems a lot more sleeker. I know Vince McMahon has Kevin Dunn doing all the camera shots and that, and the wrestling is a lot better. I mean, because obviously they've got NXT and they had OVW as well. So, and the indies as well. Like wrestlers coming from the indies, they're just it's more about the wrestler now rather than the shock value of the Attitude Era, where it was like out of desperation they'll compete with WCW, so it was like evening gown matches, hardcore matches where like when they were fighting outside of the arena. I think it was with Hardcore Holly and Al Snow when he threw him in the river. And
yeah. I remember that one.
Which I mean, it's fantastic to watch, but there wasn't much wrestling. It was like just throwing him outside. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved the hardcore division. It was really fun to watch, but I think the actual there's actually wrestling now. I know it's ironic as well because Vince McMahon hates the word wrestling. Apparently, you're not allowed to say the word wrestling around him, but there's more wrestling now than there ever was.
Yeah, and I think we sort of spoke about it, didn't we, before this call? Before the start of the podcast. How it's almost slowly making a slight resurgence and a bit of a comeback. The Attitude Era, I think obviously you went from, as you're quite right to say, the shock value and the real sort of off the cuff stuff that you used to see from promos to gimmick matches to the characters and all this sort of stuff and of what was going on then. You went to literally a polar opposite, from, well, obviously it went through the ruthless aggression stage, but then the PG era, when Cena was on top and those guys, and I think it's come out the other end of that now, and I think since, for me, from an outsider looking in, who's not sort of necessarily involved in the industry as such, just a fan, since Triple H has taken on more of a hands-on role, shall we say, with the development of certain superstars and obviously being involved heavily in NXT and I'm even more, you hear through the grapevine that he's even heavily more involved in sort of who comes through to Raw and SmackDown and the product that goes out there that gets put out on a Monday night and a Friday night. Since he's come in, I think it's kind of opened that up a little bit and sort of gone back to, in some ways, being a little bit off the cuff and having the odd crude thing here and there and having the odd hardcore match and the odd blood, seeing a bit of blood on TV. 10 years ago, it would have been, you never would have seen it. And I always used to remember you'd watch the reruns at like 11 o'clock in the morning and they'd cut away when there was a chair shot and everything. It's starting to make more of a comeback. I mean, I watched a match last night, on Raw, and it was Kevin Owens and Aleister Black, and it was a prime example of what I'm speaking about. There was like putting each other through chairs, mountains of chairs in the ring, and it was brutal to watch it. The TLC, the fact that Jeff Hardy's come back and he's doing swanton bombs off a ladder again and through tables, and it's starting to make more of a resurgence again. And I think that's good. And I think if that's balanced with what you said, like the natural wrestling ability that's out there now, and they're not going to sort of just focus on putting a product out there that's just there for the shock value and just there to make people laugh, cry, scream, whatever. I think if they get that balance right, I think it can be miles better than the Attitude Era personally. And as I say, as a fan, and maybe it's because I appreciate it more because I'm a 30+ year old man, that I appreciate the product now more than I did as a child. But I seriously do believe that the product that's out there now is far better than what was out there from the Attitude Era. If you take out the likes of Austin, The Rock and sort of DX and the off the cuff promos that they did, if you take those three out, I think there's very little that competes with the product that's out there now from a wrestling standpoint and a general all-round entertainment standpoint. And if you agree,
I think they could structure Raw less because I think that was in the Attitude Era. You never knew what was going to happen, and I used to really enjoy that with like Vince would come down with the corporation and like matches would be started on the fly. I think that needs to happen again, where it's not as structured and organised, because people will realise what's going on. I think they could make it seem like it's all over the place, but not. If you know what I mean, just to get people watching it again, because I think in the Attitude Era as well, there was too many run-ins where matches never got decided. There was always a lot of no contests, and that was quite frustrating. And I know the title used to change hands a lot as well, but that was because to boost ratings. So you'd watch it because you never knew if the title would change hands or not. But I do think the wrestling is improving. I mean, especially with the NXT UK as well. I mean, some of the wrestlers on that. I mean, when you watch a UK title tournament, I was just blown away by how good some of the talent were, like Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne, Trent Seven. He's fun. He's one of my favorite. We were talking the other day about favorite wrestlers. Trent Seven is up there. I mean,
Yeah,
I think if he's still in NXT or NXT UK, but he's a really good wrestler. I mean, he's nearing 40 now, so he's towards the end of his career, but he's really good. And Tyler Bate as well. I mean, he's 22 and he does stuff that, I mean, even on the UK United Kingdom tournament, he was 19 years old, and he looked like he'd been wrestling for like 20 years. He was that good. So there's so many talented wrestlers, rather than, like, say, actually was like there'd have been like 2 or 3 really good ones who would carry the other wrestlers all the way through a match. You don't need to do that on, like, nowadays, and you can tell now if someone can't wrestle.
Yeah, I think they've got such a. I mean, WWE are in a very advantageous position, because I think they've got such a huge pool, and they've got NXT and NXT UK, as you say, SmackDown, Raw. They could pick who they want pretty much from the indies if they wanted to. And I just think that the pool out there, the pool of talent that they've got, is so vast now compared to what it was back then. That it's on one hand, it's very, very hard to keep everybody happy and obviously put a product out there that's going to please everybody, because there's always going to be a fan who's seen somebody like you've just mentioned there, Trent Seven, Tyler Bate. Not everybody can be given the opportunity. Not everybody can be on the main show. Not everybody can be the champion. So there's always going to be that side of things at play. There's always going to be, why has this guy never got a push? And why has this guy never been on the main roster? And because there'll always be fans of a wrestler that feel as though that wrestler should get a push for whatever reason. And I think that's good, because it creates debates and things like that. And sometimes it actually pushes. Sometimes if they get enough sort of traction on social media, sometimes it actually transpires into actually getting the push. We've seen it before. And I think Daniel Bryan was a prime example of that, hashtag yes movement and all that. And I think they've got such a vast pool, as I say, of talent. So as I say, on one hand, that's difficult, because they can't please everyone. But on the other hand, it's just like they're in such a strong position, because the products that they're putting out there already, in my opinion, are good. And I think that the way they've navigated the COVID situation is commendable. I think the way they did it from the Performance Centre when it first started, to how they then went to the Amway Centre and have put this Thunderdome on, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, you watch it at home, and I don't know about you, but like I've kind of forgotten that the fans aren't there.
Yeah.
Like it's like when you watch the football or rugby or anything. Obviously, I know it's piped in sound and all this, and sometimes you catch yourself sort of realizing it. But at the same time, like, they've put on a product that has kept me engaged during very testing times, and I think that's it's got to be commended. But yeah, like, Attitude Era versus now, like the current era wins hands down for me. I think if you picked some of the best natural wrestlers from today versus the best would-be natural wrestlers from the Attitude Era, there'd be very little contest. I think very much there was good characters and there was a lot of good fighters, and there would have been and there was natural wrestling ability wrestlers, mixed martial artists, and all this. But I think nowadays, like, give or take the odd few, pretty much all of them come with a really good wrestling background. And I think, you know, you look at the likes of Chad Gable, Shoji, I was called now, you know, who's just a fantastic natural born wrestler. Like, there's no gimmicks with him, although they've tried to give him one. You know, what you see is what you get. He's a natural born wrestler, and I think I'd put him up against any wrestler back in the Attitude Era, pretty much. So I think it's a lot better product, and I think I appreciate more, as I say, from being an older guy now, watching the product, and also experiencing along with yourself, like firsthand, how difficult it is. And that's just the training, you know, that's not, you know, the actual matches or anything like that goes into it. You know, we just got a taste there, very, very, very small diluted version of what the professional guys go through. But yeah, I've got like utmost respect, and I think I appreciate the product a lot more now than I ever did sort of growing up. And so yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand this though when the wrestlers, because I was quite naive as well, but yeah, you've got to train and learn all the moves, but you're also putting on a show for a crowd, and you've got to keep the crowd entertained as well. And like that's what they were showing us. It's like you've got to constantly be in the center of the ring. You've got to keep the audience engaged while being absolutely exhausted doing all of these moves. It's like it is like the superhuman to be able to do it every night as well. Like when house shows are on, have like maybe one night off a week. In the 80s as well, some people would wrestle like twice a day, like 7 days a week. Jake and Snake Roberts used to, like, for like 300 days. So it must be one of the toughest sports, and they don't even get any credit. It's just, oh yeah, it's fake. And I think that's when that guy slapped that reporter for saying it was fake. I think he
there's a viral video of that, wasn't it? I think, yeah, I completely agree. I think people are entitled to their opinion, and if they don't want to watch the product, they can turn the channel over, so to speak. But I think it does get on my nerves. I've kind of got to the age, as we said earlier in the podcast, like, kind of got to the age now where I don't care. Like, it's water off a duck's back. Like, if people don't want to watch it or they want to judge me for watching it, like, it's water off a duck's back to me. I'm not bothered. Like, I like it, and I don't mind telling people that I like it. I love it, in fact. But yeah, I think now more than ever, as I say, like, I love the product that you're putting out there. I think there's such a good balance from, you know, you still get that shock value with returns and, you know, the in-ring action and all this sort of stuff, and they do 100%, and it's something they've always done with the storytelling. I think they definitely sometimes surprise you, whether you're happy with it or not, you know, with the end result that comes out of it. The one thing they do is they keep you on your toes, and sometimes you think it's going to go one way and it completely blindsides you, and you're like, what? Like, sometimes it feels nonsensical where it's gone. You know, I look at the Eric Rowan storyline with the mechanical spider, and, you know, it was a really, in my opinion, poorly done storyline, but it kept me engaged. Like, each week I tuned in to find out what was in that cage, man. Like, you know, and it's something that they've done for years. And I think more often than not, you're really happy with the outcome, whether it be a shock or something you kind of expect. That one wasn't. That was a probably poor example, but it's just another example of how they keep you engaged week in, week out. And I think, you know, it's very hard to find something like that keeps you engaged week in, week out. And as you say, like, these guys are doing it 300 odd days a year. You know, they take very little time off. You know, it's been running for how many odd years now? You know, weekly, every single week, Mondays and Fridays, and now obviously with the addition of NXT. on a Wednesday as well, and AEW and Dynamite. It's just like so. My hat's off to them, and I think obviously we're in the coming weeks. I think we'll delve more into it, and I think speak about more sort of maybe in a bit more granular detail over certain events and topics, because we've spoke about how excited we are to speak about so many different things. I suppose tonight's more about just speaking about the industry in general and our love for it, putting that out there. And I know we've obviously got like reviews coming up and topics that we want to discuss and put that out there. Whether some of them are controversial, who knows? And some of them may draw up a bit of debate. But yeah, I know there's loads that me and yourself want to talk about and put it out there. And hopefully, some like-minded individuals will get something from it. But yeah.
With the review side, I think we'll hopefully have some guest wrestlers on as well whenever we can. It'd be great to hear if people who have had the experience wrestling in and out the ring as well, hearing their stories and their experiences and any anecdotes that they have, and just any questions that we give them. It'd be nice to hear get their input. Got a few lined up. Want to give them away yet? That's a surprise. But yeah, we've got a few that are.
There's quite a few gentlemen taking over the program, haven't we?
Yeah. But yeah, it's just really exciting because I could talk about wrestling all night. It would bore me at all. I just got into once because my wife was saying something important to me, and she went, "Were you listening?" And not realizing that I just went to her, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening. I was thinking about wrestling."
Honesty is the best policy.
Yeah, I think it's because I was at Mars where I just told her I was honest. I was like, she didn't DDT me though, so I was all right.
I love it, man. Yes, I think it's important, that people watching this, I think, when we sort of put it out there, I think it's important that they know why we're doing it, which I hope we've kind of got across. And it's as organic as just two guys who want to sort of speak about the love for wrestling. It's as simple as that. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff over the weeks. We're going to be doing quizzes for that lovely belt behind you. So we've got a bit more detail of that coming. We're going to be doing a little bit more of as I say, insight into other topics that we want to discuss, as I've sort of previously mentioned. So whether there be sort of brand specific stuff or sort of just industry specific stuff. And then, we're going to have guests, as you quite rightly say. So we've had a few people already who've had professional wrestling experience, and some names that a lot of people would probably recognise already sort of get in touch and say they'd be willing to do the podcast, which is really exciting, when we haven't even really sort of landed the first one. So that's really exciting. And, what we're going to be doing is running this podcast bi-weekly. And then each week in between that, we're going to be doing a review of a pay-per-view that's picked offline, completely at random. We kind of just, pick a year and pick a month, and it's completely at random. And we review a pay-per-view of one of the main brands from yesteryear. So it could be a pay-per-view from last year, could be a pay-per-view from '92. And I can sort of announce that the pay-per-view that we're reviewing on the next show, which will air next week, will be SummerSlam 1998, as picked offline by yours truly, Kev, which I know is very, very happy with. So we'll be reviewing that next week and uploading the video at some point, and hopefully people enjoy the content that we put out in the coming weeks and months and hopefully years. So I don't know if you've got any parting words, Kev, but I've loved sort of speaking about our love for the industry, but I don't know if you've got any parting words.
Yeah, if you've liked what you heard and you want to put us over, subscribe. Don't bury us. Give us a push and subscribe.
I like it. I thought you was going to get heel turn in some way, shape or form. But I don't know how you would have got it into the first. So.
Don't be a heel. Don't dislike the video. No, like what Liam says, it's really exciting to be able to do something that I know a lot about and I'm really passionate about as well. Like, because that's the two things I know a lot about wrestling from watching it, and I'm really passionate about it as well. So them two things together is just perfect because I can talk about it all night. So and not even like lose track of time. So it's perfect for me. I'm as happy as a pig in sugar.
Yeah, let's keep it PG. Keep it PG. No, I think big thanks to you, Kev, for sort of joining this journey, if you want to call it that. You know, but what we're hopefully both going to start and see where it takes us. You know, I mean, if 4 people watch this video and 4 people get something from it, or 1 person gets something from it, or no people get something from it, I mean, obviously we want as many people to get something from it as possible, but at the same time, we're just doing it for our own sort of love and sort of, as you say, quite rightly, you know, could just speak about it all night. So just for our own love of the industry. So if people get something from it, brilliant. If they don't, then we've tried. So we'll put it out there, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. So SummerSlam '98 next week. So if you've got any memories of the event itself, you might have been there. Who knows? But yeah, I think looking at the card from that night, I think that's our homework for this week. So we're gonna go away and shut ourselves in a dark room and watch SummerSlam '98 on repeat all week, and then try and sort of analyze it and break it down in some way, shape or form next week, and just have a general chat about it. And then we'll be back for another podcast for another topic the week after. So yeah, signing off. Thanks for watching.
See you soon, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.